The men who carried flamethrowers knew they would not grow old. Not after the war, not even until the next morning. They knew it because everyone knew it. The officers, the comrades, the enemy. When a flamethrower appeared on the battlefield, everything changed. Not because of destruction alone, but because of fear. These men did not carry rifles. They carried a target. World War I was a war of industry. Artillery tore landscapes apart. Machine guns cut down entire waves of men. Gas crawled silently through trenches. Death was everywhere. And yet there were weapons that worked differently. The flamethrower was one of them. It did not only kill, it burned, it suffocated, it left no bodies, only traces, and that was why its carriers were hunted first. In 1915, the Germans were the first to deploy flamethrowers systematically. The Flammenwerfer 16 was not a handheld weapon, it was a system. 2 heavy tanks on the back, filled with flammable liquid and pressure gas. A hose, a metal lance pointing forward like a spear. The entire system weighed more than 30 kilograms. It smelled of chemicals and oil. It hissed when pressure escaped. And it made its carrier slow. A flamethrower soldier could not run. He could not jump. He could not press himself flat into the mud. When artillery struck, others had a chance. The flamethrower carrier did not. The moment before the attack. The most dangerous part did not begin with the flame. It began before it. Flamethrower teams often waited for hours in the trench while other units were already being prepared. They sat on ammunition crates, leaned against earthen walls, and listened to artillery in the distance. The tanks lay beside them, heavy, silent, like coffins that had not yet been closed. No one spoke to them. Infantrymen made space when they passed, not out of respect, but out of instinct. No one wanted to sit next to someone who would die first. Some turned away, others stared at the ground. The flamethrower made its carrier invisible even before the attack began. Many knew they would fire the hose only once, that the first burst of flame might be the last. Some wrote notes, some handed away personal items. Others pretended it was just another assignment, because otherwise it was unbearable. When the order came, they stood up, lifted the tanks onto their backs, and felt the weight immediately slow them down. Every step forward was deliberate. Every step was a decision that could not be taken back. And as they moved, they knew the enemy had already seen them. When the flame was released, it was not a shot. It was an event. A roaring stream of fire poured into the trench, crawled around corners, into dugouts, devoured oxygen. Many did not die from the fire itself, but from the smoke. Others burned without dying immediately. Entire trench sections surrendered the moment the flame appeared. Not out of cowardice, out of instinct. A man can fight bullets, but not fire that hunts him. And that exact effect made the flamethrower the highest priority target. On the Allied side, orders were clear. Kill the flamethrower first. Machine guns were redirected. Snipers searched for the tanks on the soldiers' back. Artillery observers reported positions. Because everyone knew, if this man got closer, the trench was lost. The Allies developed their own flamethrowers as well. The Americans introduced the M1917 flamethrower in 1917, heavy, unreliable, prone to leaks. British systems were hardly better. But regardless of the army, the reality was always the same. Flamethrower units had dramatically lower survival rates, not because of technical failure, but because of their role. They were assault weapons. They went first, and they were killed first. A hit on the tanks was not a normal death. When a bullet or shell pierced the containers, the carrier turned into an explosion of fire. Sometimes he burned instantly. Sometimes he ran through the trench screaming, a living torch, until he collapsed. These images burned themselves into memory, on both sides. The flamethrower was not only feared, it was hated. There are reports that captured flamethrower soldiers were less likely to survive captivity. Not as an order, not as a rule, but as a reaction. The flamethrower crossed an unspoken line. It made death personal. The Somme, when the flame became too large. In the summer of 1916, during the Battle of the Somme, the Germans attempted something extreme, even by the standards of that war. They deployed the largest flamethrower ever built. The so-called gross Flammenwerfer was no longer a portable weapon. It was an installation. Hundreds of liters of fuel were buried underground in tanks, connected by pipes to a rigid flame lance. For weeks, engineers prepared it, camouflaged it, built it into the earth. When it was activated, a wall of fire erupted from the ground. Entire trench sections vanished in smoke. The flame was so intense that it seemed to burn the air itself. And in that moment, the flamethrower became a death sentence. British observers immediately reported the position. Artillery was redirected. Within minutes, shells struck exactly where the flame came from. A single hit was enough to turn tanks, pipes, and dugouts into one burning grave. The crew had no chance. After the Somme, the gross Flammenwerfer almost disappeared. The Germans had learned what flamethrower troops already knew. The bigger the flame, the shorter the life of the man who ignites it. The men who carried these weapons knew this. Many volunteered, believing the war would end sooner if it became more brutal. Others were chosen, often for their build, not their will. They trained separately, they lived separately, and they often died separately. A flamethrower team usually consisted of 2 or 3 men: carrier, security, replacement. When the carrier fell, the next took the hose. When the second died, the third. The flame had to continue until resistance collapsed. In some units, not a single team survived a full cycle of combat. New men arrived, carried the same tanks, walked the same path, died in the same place. The war memorized them. The use of flamethrowers changed the enemy as well. Trenches were dug deeper, dugouts were sealed, firing slits narrowed. Soldiers kept grenades ready, not to throw, but to kill themselves if the flame came. That is the moment when a weapon becomes more than technology. It changes behavior, it changes decisions, it changes the will to live. By 1918, flamethrowers slowly vanished from the front. Not because they were ineffective, but because they were too expensive. Not in steel, in men. The carriers were used up. Replacements were hard to find. No one volunteered anymore. Survivors suffered from burns, lung damage, nightmares. They were living warnings. After the war, flamethrowers were banned, then reintroduced, then banned again, but their reputation remained. In World War II, men once again carried these tanks. Once again, they were shot first. Once again, they burned. World War I had shown what happens when a weapon replaces fear with certainty. Flamethrower troops rarely survived because their task was not to fight. Their task was to be fear. And fear is always killed first. When the flamethrower appeared, the fight was already decided, no matter who won, because no one left that place unchanged. Not the enemy, not the carrier, and often not even the survivors. The men with the flamethrowers received no monuments, no songs, no parades, only scars or graves, and a truth the war never forgot. Some weapons do not only kill the enemy, they also kill the man who carries them.